Hello all. This process video will focus on image manipulation, correcting verticals that are vanishing, horizontals that are a little bit leaning, and also talk a little bit about cropping of an image to sort of get the focal point that you were intending. So I'm going to do a file open, and I've batch converted in a previous tutorial some color images into grayscale, black and white. And so what I want to do is I want to open an image that has these sort of vanishing verticals and start to talk about manipulations to get those straight up and down in parallel. So this is an elevation view, in my opinion. When I was taking the shot, I would like to look straight on. Not quite there. As you see, I'm a little low on this side compared to here. Certainly, all these verticals are vanishing to a third point up here as opposed to being parallel. I really want this image to focus on the center. So there are a couple manipulations I can go through to get that to set up and really present itself the way I intended to be experienced. So going to the filter tool, I can go to the lens correction option. And under lens correction, there's a tab with auto correction. And we're instead going to focus on custom. And in the custom tab, we're going to be down in the transform area. We're going to look at the vertical perspective, a horizontal perspective. This image actually isn't leaning left or right, but if you found yourself that you were off from level to the ground, you can of course also manipulate your angle as well. So in the vertical perspective, as I move my number's negative, pulling the slider to the left, you'll notice that the top of the image warps out, allowing the building to kind of stand up, right? And you see it in this transformation, how much it now felt like that building was leaning, when in reality it's not. So this is more of the intent that we're after. Similarly though, now that we're standing upright, you notice that these horizontals are low over here, high over here. So if this was an elevation, like a true orthographic, right? We know those sills are aligned. This sill is aligned with each other, but then this railing is of course level to itself. Similar here, and same thing with the steps. So as I pull this across and start to get somewhere in that zone of maybe, yeah, it looks like maybe in that 9, maybe even a little lower. I can type in numbers here instead. I'm just using the sliders to get close. But you'll notice now too, I've got my horizontals of the steps, and I'm really now focused on that singular axial sort of direction that I wanted to get after. So when I click OK, I now have this corrected image. So there's one other thing I'd like to check, and that would be this notion of centering, right? So I got lucky here. This was actually through just that correction. I'm going to go over and make sure I have checked my view rulers. And with your rulers on at the top and the left-hand side, you can left click and pull a guideline across. So left click and hold, pull a guideline across, and it auto snaps to edges of layers in the frame and also snaps to the center. And this thing, as you see, just snaps right here. And that is a nice sort of way that this cropped itself, but that's what I was after. Similarly, I can check my horizontals by doing my left click and hold from the top and pull down some guidelines, and you can see I'm pretty close. As a matter of fact, this is just the nature of maybe this historic building, right? This is a very old nation building, but you can see I'm pretty much straight on here. This could be a little bit of distortion, but again, we're not in a true orthographic, but I'm very close. And so even though I'm in a perspective, I can really focus on those lines. But what's really interesting too about snapping, the dead center of this image is that windowsill, just due to the nature of the sloping site, but this level 1 being right on the water in the canal here. So it's really interesting that my eye line was right at that. So again, compositionally, it's interesting to see like where these things are. Again, geometry is everywhere. It's a really amazing sort of tool. So that kind of like quadrant, 4 square, center focused target, that really can help me set up a composition that is pleasing to the eye and tells that story of this bridge as it sets you up for entry into the project. Okay, so as I end this, I just want to take, now that I've got this transformation that happened with lens correction, I need to go back and layer, flatten image, and then the last thing I'm going to do is do an image rotation. And that image rotation is for my contact sheet later. I'd like to place everything in landscape format. So right now I'm a portrait orientation. I'm just going to rotate the whole image 90 degrees clockwise, and that would be to make sure my image is landscape. If your image is already landscape, you don't have to do this step, but this will allow you to set up a contact sheet with a very sort of composition focused, not singular image focused field condition. You can of course print this and present it portrait later on at a larger scale, but it's a nice way to sort of view these elements as a field.